I am reading from a part of the book called The Return of the BirdTribes by Ken Carey. And this is toward the end. And I want you to know that in the description bar, I have the playlist so you can listen to the entire book, because this is a book that I read on my channel. So I'm just reading a small portion of it now to get people interested in wanting to hear the whole thing. This is the afterward. This man is talking about his experience in a sweat lodge. The day was over. I entered the twilight interior of the lodge and sat cross-legged in a circle of half-naked people. Fascinated, I watched as glowing red-hot stones were, one by one, brought in silence to our center's circle. Motion slowed. The last of the stones was set in place, the opening of the lodge sealed. I could taste the blackness, the silence, the stillness of human space. Time flowed without time, with no measure of its passage. And suddenly there was light. Dried celery root was dancing upon the glowing rocks, swirling, sparkling like 10,000 twinkling stars in the great eternal path of the Milky Way. Memories rose from some uncharted realm within me to form patterns in the starlight glow. I felt an unnamed power, intimate, familiar. I had often heard of the sweat lodge ceremony, but this was my first experience in a traditional Native American lodge. The dome-shaped structure had been constructed on the slopes of Mount Shasta by a member of the Karuk tribe. Each component of the frame was built with the type of wood specified by long-standing tribal tradition. Covered with colored blankets, the sweat lodge rested beside the ice-cold flowing waters of a spring-fed river. The sweat ceremony was offered on this, the first evening of a starseed gathering on the mountain. It would take many pages to describe what transpired in that lodge, even in the silence before the first water was splashed upon the rocks. The words in which I attempted to clothe my understanding of what was happening had already become as elusive as if they were dead leaves caught up in some restless spirit wind. But as the water was splashed upon the glowing red-hot jewels of the earth, and the first burst of steam threw its power into the air, a rushing gust of memory seemed to blow the last of those tattered word leaves far into the depths of night. I found myself suspended in a silence rich and enduring, a silence within which language did not so much seem to cease as to be given birth. When the chanting began, I knew the words. I knew the melody, the rhythm, the inflection. I knew their every meaning. Without thinking, I sang from the depths of my heart in the familiar, flowing Native American tongue. Not long into the chant, I remembered, almost casually, as if it were a matter of small importance, that I had spent far more time chanting in sweat lodges than I had ever spent, for example, inside an automobile. It may sound strange, but when that realization filled my awareness, it was not as if I remembered the sweat lodges and the chanting. Such deep experience my spirit had not forgotten. It was as if I remembered the automobile, the flickering recent image soon released to the steam, and the katydids and the bullfrogs, and the sound of water rushing over rocks in the moonlight. Eternities passed. Those of us within that lodge had fused into a single being, a single heartbeat. Time after time, water was thrown upon the glowing stones. Without warning, flowing out from deep within me, came memories' unbidden explosion. Suddenly, there were other stars dancing in a field of midnight. Not dried celery root this time, but real stars in a real sky, high above a place I loved more than I could ever say. I was one of a circle of luminous beings gathered at another meeting. The thoughts that were shared were but part of our purpose. The very arrangement of our circle and its placement against the stars was itself designed to imprint upon us something more, so that later, if a time came when we found ourselves slumbering beneath a blanket of history, the very image of the circle of the faithful of the stars might shake something loose in us and jolt us into wakefulness. My present purpose in drawing attention to this meeting and sharing this account of how I came to remember it is to call those who attended it back into mindfulness, of the sacred trust that the Creator of all this universe bestowed upon us at that time. You may remember, the location of our meeting was not upon the physical surface of the earth, but upon the higher frequencies of the spirit world, a location in the earth's upper atmosphere above the 33rd degree of northern latitude. From where we gathered, we could see below us the steady rotation of the northern hemisphere, the passage of its oceans, islands, continents. Those of us present at this gathering were not at that time projecting identities upon the earth. None of us was a graduate of the clash of reality cooperatives that had manifest as a Second World War. Nor had we known of its occurrence would any of us have approved of such an extreme approach. For jolting incarnate projections into wakefulness was a strategy alien to our ways of thinking, and in any case for us it was unnecessary. We were spirits with successful experience in securing the cooperation of our human bodies, minds, and the hearts during times when we clothed ourselves in form for this very reason. Most of us had not walked the earth for some time, and among most at this particular gathering, it would require calculation to say whether that time was centuries or millennia. A few of us had helped to guide the human family through its more recent turning points, but we were the minority. The meeting was called to order by the great angel whose body is the sun, a customary procedure that did not surprise us. Typically, however, such meetings were held only for those about to embark on incarnate lives, and there were a few among us with that intention. We were alerted to the unusual significance of the occasion when, flickering across the face of the sun, we beheld the countenance of the Universal Mother. And indeed, when the thought transfer began, it was she who spoke, she whose very body is the galaxies. Her purpose in addressing us was introductory in nature and proved of value in preparing us for what was to come. For I think, without her intermediary guidance, what appeared next might have otherwise triggered so much surprise as to cause, at the very least, a delay in the proceedings. It was none other than the white light of the Eternal One, focused in a manner rarely seen in any star. We lived in the presence of that great spirit, it is true. Our lives were lived knowing it as the source from which we drew our all. But to witness so sharp a focus of that presence was as distinct from what we were used to as gentle sunlight is from sunlight focused through a lens upon a single spot. In the communication that followed, the three manifestations of being, solar, universal, and eternal, flowed in and out of one another, blending, merging, weaving the colors of their whole. At times it was hard to identify which of the Trinity was the speaker. So unified were their waves and so aligned their purpose. The Creator spoke through these three, giving us specific instruction. I will pass on the words as best I can recall. You are being invited, we were told, to incarnate upon a world where illusion prevails in the minds and hearts of those whom I have created in my image and likeness. You who accept this invitation will soon find yourselves in the last days of the human species, infancy, in a situation where the currents of fear have ruled their experience of separation. I have numbered the days of this condition, and they are soon to end. I have established the eternal forces that will divide the fear from the love in human consciousness, banishing the one and redeeming the other. I'm inviting you to be my agents in this fearful culture, that you might do what you can from within to complement the changes I am bringing from without. For I know that there will likely be fearful ones whose physical bodies will not survive the separation between love and fear. But I know also that there is no reason, no good reason, why even so much as a single human being should disincarnate during this cleavage. I have called you here because you have proven in times past that you can, to a high degree, keep your bodies, minds, and hearts in harmony with your spirits. I release to you now an invitation to incarnate in these tribes who inhabit the earth. I have not asked this of you until now, for during earlier historical times, conditions on Earth were not as conducive to the spreading of our awareness. But the awakening in human consciousness has begun. Many are now opening to the living information. Your presence would do much to minimize the possible trauma that could occur with the changing of the age. I remember distinctly, while it was being explained that what was happening on Earth was like the changing of a guard, suddenly the spinning planet, which until now had seemed unremarkable except for the gentle rocking of her season, was sprouting an enormous wound. An ominous gray circular cloud rode toward us with the new day, obscuring the southern portion of the Japanese archipelago. As our vision penetrated beneath, we saw that it was supported by a black pillar, a turbulent inferno of awesome destruction. With each roll of the earth, we could feel raw human terror broadcast upward, rippling through our open hearts in waves of unbridled fear. Then suddenly, rolling toward us from the west, came another, a towering column of dark red, cloud-like substance surrounding an empty void that seemed as impossible in the midst of such chaos as the chaos itself. Immediately, we slowed our time perception and zoomed in to experience this day. Into a vacuum hole, soil and water and organic life poured, tumbling and boiling, rising into billowing clouds of turbulence that rose almost to touch us. As far as we could see, all beneath us was inhabited by swirling, sucking whirlpools and shooting balls of random fire, the likes of which I have seen only upon the surface of stars. I will not elaborate. Into those moments we brought eternity. In them we are still piecing together what justice requires. It is enough to say that on that day we experienced hell. Yet, even as we did, we knew what our response to the Great Spirit's invitation would be. Yes, we would incarnate. Yes, the time had come. The purpose of our incarnations, it was explained, is to prepare people for the time when the lies that give birth to all fear-centered thinking will be banished forever from human consciousness. Though it may sound strange to you, if human populations are not prepared, it will be much more difficult for them to survive the cleavage. So entwined are the thoughts of fear, not only in their thinking, but even in their very sense of self. We must help them relax with their identities and stop defining themselves as vulnerable entities. We were told that to effectively achieve this objective, we were, of necessity, going to have to incarnate, not in protected locations, as had been our wont in ancient times, having as little to do with the fearful as possible, but into the most fearful of the planet's ruling families. This would ensure our strategic placement among those elements of humanity who were in fact expected to prove most resistant to the powers of education. The Creator was careful in making it clear to us that we were foregoing our traditional family bonds in order to incarnate in this way, and that we were likely, upon awakening, to find ourselves in unsupportive and vibrationally alien surroundings. It was emphasized that we did not have to accept this assignment, that our role in this was purely voluntary. Even if we accepted, there was no assurance that we would succeed in entirely eliminating the trauma of the transition. But there would be a greater chance that more people would come through the moment of final cleavage with their senses intact. To alert us to this opportunity, our circle had been called to gather in the starlit skies above the 33rd parallel. We were cautioned about the dangers we were likely to encounter in a world still very much under the control of fearful organizations.